American President Donald Trump admitted that it is Vladimir Putin who is disrupting the peace process to end the war in Ukraine. The day before, Trump published an article from the New York Post on the social network Truth Social with the following headline: Vladimir Putin's empty talk about the strike on his residence shows that it is Russia that stands in the way of peace. Well, a little later, the United States Central Intelligence Agency made an official statement. The collected data indicates that Ukraine did not attack and was not planning to attack Putin's residence. A major strategic military facility in that very Novgorod region was targeted, and the Kremlin knew about it perfectly well but decided to put on a show. The article that Donald Trump liked so much directly states that after such blatant lies from the Kremlin, it's finally time to actively strike at Putin. After all, he is the reason there is no peace. And in the end, the CIA revealed information about that very military facility targeted by the armed forces of Ukraine. And this information makes the story even more interesting, because it's not just a military facility, it's a strategic military missile base. But that's not all. It turned out that after this, a stunned Stephen Witkoff requested a phone call with Zelensky and European leaders so they could explain to him what was actually going on. My name is Alex Peachy. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and leave any comment under this episode, and also subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. Friends, you know that every day, and New Year's is no exception. I analyze facts, but today I want to talk to you about feelings. A video was released on the channel of my favorite psychologist, which I personally watched with great interest, about January 1st as the day of collective digital hangover. We haven't even woken up, yet we're already overwhelmed by the news. So, the video that I strongly recommend you watch is exactly about how to simply remain human when the world around you is slowly going crazy. Is this the best thing you can do for your mind? Today, January 1st, the link to this video appears on your screens. It will be in the description for this video, and I'll pin it in the comments. So be sure to watch it, make sure to check it out, watch this episode, you definitely won't regret it. So, representatives of United States National Security officially stated that Ukraine did not carry out strikes against the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, or any of his residences during the alleged drone operation. Refuting Moscow's claim that Kiev was trying to kill the Russian bull dictator, this conclusion is supported by the assessment of the Central Intelligence Agency. The Wall Street Journal reports this today. And so, according to a CIA official, the United States determined that Ukraine tried to strike a military target located in the same area as Putin's country residence in Valdai, but not in its immediate vicinity. As it became known later, the armed forces of Ukraine were targeting this facility, which is located in the pocket. In these images. This is the 13th arsenal of the main missile and artillery directorate, that is, Friends. That's where the missiles are stored before being launched at Ukraine. It turned out that this arsenal is located 50 kilometers from Putin's residence in Valdai, but his residence is basically right in the path of the drones. Most importantly, something has already hit there once. This happened on November 20th, 2024, and at that time, drones of the armed forces of Ukraine also reportedly flew almost directly over Putin's residence in Valdai. This time, the Russians used the incident for propaganda and to cover up the missile base. And how ridiculous those who supported Vladimir Putin's government look now, when he brazenly and cynically lied that his residence was attacked by Ukrainians. But on Wednesday, December 31, President Trump decided to really surprise everyone on New Year's Eve. After all, on his social network Truth Social, he suddenly and unexpectedly posted a link to a New York Post editorial claiming that there was no strike on Putin's residence, and that Putin is blatantly lying to Trump. The headline was simply incredible. Putin's empty talk about the strike on him shows that it is Russia that stands in the way of peace. Now I will quote this article to you, but first I want to note that Trump has publicly stated that he respects this publication and he has never called the New York Post fake news. And, huge respect to the editorial staff of this newspaper for not being afraid to write articles that go against the position of the White House. Because honestly, the newspaper risks simply falling out of favor with Trump and no longer being in the good graces of the American president. But no, Trump continues to read it and moreover reposts it. I'll quote the entire article a bit later, it's very eloquent, but the most important thing is that, according to a Wall Street Journal source familiar with the conversation, Donald Trump's post appeared after CIA Director John Ratcliffe briefed the United States president on this issue and stated that Putin was lying. And there was no attack on the residents in Valdai. American intelligence has a number of ways to monitor Russian airspace, military activity, and attacks on its territory, including satellites, radars, intercepted communications, and much more. Besides, let's be honest, the CIA has access to Ukrainian intelligence and can contact them and even request information about the flight mission of every drone that is launched. But it's no secret that we cooperate with them, so it wasn't hard to find out. It wasn't hard to find out that the drones weren't even targeting Putin's residence. Besides, it's worth noting that Ukraine has admitted its involvement in some assassinations and sabotage attacks deep inside Russian territory, but has categorically stated that Ukraine was not involved in the attack on Putin's residence. That is, if Ukraine had attacked the residence, they wouldn't have hidden it. On the contrary, it would have been a public attack to put psychological pressure on Russians. Ukrainian officials claim that Putin is looking for a pretext to worsen relations between Washington and Kiev and to weaken his opponent's negotiating position in the peace talks mediated by the United States, and so trying to back up the Kremlin's accusations. The Russian Ministry of Defense said on Wednesday that it intercepted 91 Ukrainian drones targeting Vladimir Putin's Novgorod residence. In a video released by a Russian Ministry of Defense spokesperson, what they say is a downed Ukrainian drone equipped with explosives is shown lying in the snow. And those were all the pieces of evidence of the attack. Well, except for a map that showed arrows indicating the direction the drones were flying. I have a separate episode on this topic, and I really recommend you watch it to have a little laugh at the Russians. It's telling that the Russian accusations came after almost a 3-hour meeting between Trump and the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, on Sunday, which the United States president called excellent. He even allowed for the possibility of traveling to Kiev to promote his position in favor of peace. Referring to the alleged attack, Moscow threatened to reconsider its already tough negotiating position and carried out drone strikes on the port area of Odessa. Moreover, United States intelligence reported to Trump that Moscow also appears to be strengthening its positions in Asia and the Middle East, making accusations that Ukraine allegedly tried to carry out an operation against Vladimir Putin personally. After all, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi stated on Tuesday that he is deeply concerned about the alleged operation by the Ukrainian armed forces. Prime Minister of Pakistan Shahbaz Sharif called it a vile act. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the United Arab Emirates also expressed concern about this accusation. And how foolish they all look now when American intelligence says, yes, no one struck anywhere, what are you making up? It is known that Trump's special envoy Stephen Witkoff has already reported on social media that on Wednesday, on New Year's Eve, when all this information was already out in the open, he urgently held talks with national security advisors in the United Kingdom, France, and Germany to discuss further steps toward achieving peace. But importantly, Rustem Umerov took part in the conversation. This is a high-ranking Ukrainian national security official and Ukrainian negotiator. Stephen Witkoff wrote that the discussions focused on possible guarantees, security guarantees and, quote, mechanisms for preventing conflicts that will help end the war and ensure that it does not resume. Well, now, if you've waited for this moment, I'll give you the full text of that very editorial article, which is being reposted today personally by the American President Donald Trump. So the New York Post continues, and I quote the entire passage in full. The mood was cautiously optimistic when Volodymyr Zelensky left Mar-a-Lago after meeting with Trump on Sunday. The president of Ukraine compromised on many points of the peace plan, and President Trump said he was ready to come to Ukraine to lobby for territorial concessions in parliament. The end of the devastating war is closer than ever before, Trump said. Instead, the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin chose lies, hatred, and death on command. Putin announced that Ukrainians launched drones to kill him at one of his extravagant residences. Because of this, Russians have no choice but to be tougher, threatened Kremlin spokesman Peskov. Strikes near Putin's residence, who's led a brutal war for nearly 4 years, especially anger him, which says a lot. Russia launched 131 drones on Christmas and killed 7 civilians in Ukraine, civilians. The Kremlin deliberately targets apartments and power plants to punish ordinary peaceful Ukrainians. Russians are kidnapping children, they torture and execute prisoners. Moreover, Moscow has repeatedly tried to kill Zelensky, so any strike against Putin is more than justified. Yes, that's the inconsistency. Most likely there was no drone strike at all. Zelensky firmly denied it. Peskov said that Russians don't have to provide evidence and urged people to take the Kremlin at its word. No, we won't. Putin's entire war is a lie. All this so-called special military operation is to denazify a neighboring country that isn't ruled by Nazis. Invented and embellished narratives give Putin an excuse to reject the progress achieved by Donald Trump. Just like in Alaska, Putin was offered peace, but instead he spat in America's face. Vladimir Putin is not an honest broker. He sees neither common sense nor business opportunities. Look beyond Ukraine. Russia has long supported Iran and this week launched 3 satellites for the Ayatollah regime. Putin supports the corrupt and drug-trafficking Maduro regime in Venezuela. And recent reports have found that a Russian Shadow Fleet vessel sunk off the coast of Spain last year was transporting nuclear components to North Korea. The answer should not be bigger concessions but a bigger stick. Kyiv has done its part. The responsibility should fall on Vladimir. Either he takes a step forward or he will face tougher sanctions and more lethal weapons for Ukraine. Despite his resistance, Putin's actions reek of a worsening internal situation. His economy is stagnating, his propaganda is floundering while Russian soldiers return endlessly. His victory is far from inevitable. Spare us his crocodile tears and turn up the heat. Donald Trump, what do you think of this material from the New York Post which you're sharing? Friends, at the end of this episode, I once again urge you to watch the video I recommended at the beginning of the episode. The link is appearing on your screens. It's also in the video description and in the pinned comment. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like, friends. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel so that it keeps running and bringing you information in 2026, you can do this by making any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. That's it for now. Take care. Goodbye all.